this episode of Underwater Image Lab, I'm going to break down my 10 best shots on the DiveSAGA channel and share the lessons I've learned. Well, hello everybody and welcome back to another episode on the DiveSAGA channel. Guys, we are with 47,000 on the channel, and that's amazing. On the Instagram page, we're with 145,000. And so you can imagine that I'm starting to get a lot of messages, like almost every day, about people wanting underwater videography tips. So I figured I'd make a video not only to maybe break down what I consider to be my 10 best shots or 10 best pieces of storytelling on this DiveSAGA channel, and maybe tie them to pieces of advice that I maybe wish I would have learned a little sooner. It's not going to be super technical, it's definitely going to be a little bit more artistic, but I think that's nice too, to exchange those types of ideas. There are a fair amount of videos on this channel with advice about settings for cameras and stuff like that. But yeah, let's get to it. What I consider to be my 10 best shots. They're not in any particular order, but on place number 10, I put this shot or series of shots in Cenote no Hoćnačić. It's not necessarily a crazy, groundbreaking shot, but I do think there is a very important lesson tied to it, which is to use enough light. Whenever I get people who ask me about advice, I always ask first, how much light are you using? Especially in the overhead environment, but also maybe in wrecks or in dive sites where conditions can be a little darker. Light is really king. And in this particular shot, I think we have some 60,000 lumens at play. That's nowhere near the most we've ever had, but the divers themselves are carrying this light with a diffuser on the light. So that's why we get a nice, even, smooth lighting. Of course, the visibility is really good and that helps, but without this light, we would never be able to get this shot. So whenever you're trying to grow as an underwater videographer, filmmaker, invest in that. That's super important. I would say even more so than the camera itself. The second one is not necessarily a particular individual shot. It's actually a series of shots. It's a sequence in our Boyai Mines series. Yeah, if you've seen that series, super cool, I think. If you haven't, go check it out. I'll link the playlist. It's 4 episodes, 15 minutes each. And there's an episode where we had to install a decompression habitat. Now, the question is always with stuff like that, especially when you have activities on the fly, how are we gonna light that? I know most people, when they first start out, they're kind of used to having their video lights where a photographer would put their strobe lights, right? At a 45-degree angle next to either side of the camera. And that can work. The problem is, as soon as you get a little bit of turbidity or as soon as the distance of your subject changes, that light becomes fairly difficult to manage. And so sometimes, and this is again a lesson that I learned, sometimes it can be useful to just place your light somewhere in the scene, maybe hide it, incorporate it, and give it a logical origin. So in this case, the light is actually on a floater. I believe it was 30,000 lumens once again. And it's floating inside the decompression habitat. Of course, we're lucky that in this case, the habitat is translucent, but that not only gives it a bit of an otherworldly feel, but it also helps kind of give a soft light on everybody who handles the habitat. And so while I had a little bit of other lights here and there, the main light source is actually emitted from the main subject, non-personal subject in the scene. I think that works really well. I'm also a big fan of soft light underwater. It gives it that high quality cinema feel. So in that sense, I would say whenever you go shooting, think about the logical origins of your light. So where does the light come from that I can justify in the scene? Can I hide it somewhere? And can I let the light be a character almost in the scene? I'm very excited, by the way, about the sponsor of today's episode. That is the Underwater Club once again. The Underwater Club is a fully online underwater photography academy. It's actually super useful and they do really awesome online modules to learn underwater photography step by step. So even if you're a beginner or you're already more advanced, you can actually pick the modules that you learn. The Underwater Club is led by award-winning underwater photographer Nicolas Remy, and he already built a community of people from more than 18 countries. And so they do live Q&A sessions, for instance, on this page. and they also give live mentoring sessions. You're actually not only able to take the classes online, but able to send in your work and have it critiqued by Nicola himself. And I know that for a lot of you, that's sometimes what you need. It's like, okay, I think my work's pretty good, but what does a professional underwater photographer have to say about this? And the Underwater Club actually enables you to have that access. So they are kind enough to sponsor this episode here on the DiveSAGA channel, and I will put a link and a QR code so that you can actually get a discount on your membership and get started to learn. I'm a member myself, I really enjoy it. I know Nicola and I enjoy talking with him. He's a very professional and very skillful underwater photographer. And the modules are broken down very nicely as well in the program. So you can kind of take what you think you need to get. So thank you to the Underwater Club for supporting the DiveSAGA channel. The next shot that I really like is a little older. It's really from maybe 5 years ago when I first started with the DiveSAGA channel, and it's the shot of a blue shark that passes super slowly, super close in front of the camera, and you can even see the eyeball move and kind of keep his eye on the camera. The reason I like it so much is because you can almost feel the sound that the eyeball makes as it moves. Now, that is not a shot that I planned to get. It's not a shot that, you know, I went in the water and just shot it. This was the result of hours and hours and hours and hours in the water. And I think that that patience is, again, something that I often end up talking about with people who ask for advice is, look, you need time. You need time in the water. You need to spend your hours in the water. And I know we all sort of gear up and get ready and get in the water with our, you know, best intentions and our greatest ambitions, but it's super important to just let things happen and let life in front of you unfold, let situations unfold, be ready and just shoot them, and be lucky a little bit as well, right? A shot like that is to some extent luck. Now, be lucky would be bad advice, but be patient, right? For luck to happen, I think is very relevant advice. Another shot that I've used a lot already on the DiveSAGA channel as a reference. I've used it in reels. I've used it as part of a talking point on a talk I gave at Asia Dive Expo in Singapore, which is this shot of a diver hovering over a saw blade in Felicitas mine in Germany. It's not a shot that I invented. I emulated that from Alex Dawson, really cool underwater photographer. You should definitely follow him if you do not yet. But the way we were able to recreate that shot in video fashion, this was a photograph, is by teamwork. And I think that's also a really big piece of advice. You don't see it in the shot, but there is, of course, obviously me filming it. There is the diver hovering above the saw blade, but there is also two other divers, one on top on the ceiling with two 20,000 lumens video lights, and then there is a diver all the way on the other side of this massive room with another 60,000 lumens floodlight. And so this is all coordinated. In fact, the whole episode is shot over 3 or 4 dives, and every minute of those dives was coordinated. We very often do that. Now, you cannot do that without a very highly functional team. So consider finding your dive buddies, looking who's also into creation, into underwater cinematography, and practice that coordination, practice that teamwork. That's gonna level up your imagery a lot. The next shot that I really like, it's not even a shot that I shot myself, and that's important. And it's this shot right here. It's from our episode Finding Snooty the Famous Lemon Shark, where we eventually ended up finding Snooty the Famous Lemon Shark. And I'm in the shot, but there were several of us filming. And so I think in our case, for instance, that's important. I often don't even care so much necessarily about the actual cinematographic quality of the shot. I care whether I have the story captured. And so here it's underwater photographer Gil Sassi. He's actually out of his element doing videography, which is not normally what he does. But by having that multitude of shots and being able to stitch those together, the story gets served better. And so I think that's something to also consider, is which story are you trying to tell, and is what you're doing and what you're planning, does it serve the story? Now, this one here is a dive that's super close to my heart. It's, I think, probably still one of my favorite dives that I've ever done. It's in this giant underwater chamber called Yapium. It's the episode is on the channel as well. We went with exploration diver Robbie Schmittner. It was a 1 hour cave dive to get to this space and then a 1 hour back. And I think we spent about half an hour in it. So it's a 2.5 hour dive. It was open circuit, so it took a lot of planning, staging. It's a complicated dive, but more importantly, it was only one dive. You heard me say earlier that we were able to, in certain cases, do multiple dives. That's how I prefer to do it, stage shots. In this case, there was no staging of shots. There was, of course, a very diligent briefing, but there was no backtracking, right? It was really just whatever happens, and you better somehow make an episode of it. And that's hard because sometimes if you're, let's say, second or third in line, you end up having the same diver's butt in front of you for your whole video. If you're the first in line, you don't even have a human in the video, which I think is even less interesting. So it really comes down to finding the shots. And my favorite shot, I think, is where, and I have to really also thank Carolina Wells for this, another amazing underwater photographer. You notice I'm not just name dropping, but I just work with a lot of talented people because I learn from them, and maybe hopefully they learn something from me. And we staged it so that all the divers separated from one another could descend into this gigantic abyss, right? And that's magical. That obviously requires me to know, okay, we're here, I'm gonna remove myself from the situation, float in the middle of this abyss, look at these three divers perfectly in sync. And then at the bottom, we actually have what Robbie calls the bishop, this really big stalagmite rising up, some divers in the foreground. But all of this is basically just, here goes nothing. We're here and I need hyper focus. And that would be my next advice is, try to create, and this is hard because you have to dive safely, so you have to be focused on the dive, but try to create a hyper focus, a second level of focus on your film work without losing focus on your diving skills, right? No matter how good you are, no matter how experienced you are, surviving the dive is mission objective number 1. Shooting pretty pictures is mission objective number 2. But being able to juggle those two levels of focus took me a long time, and I think it really is dangerous. So you need to practice that a lot. Another shot or series of shots that I really like is from very recent episode, and I think all the next few ones are fairly recent. If you've seen our episode about Le Gouffre de Cabouille, we did a 1.6 kilometer dive in and out, so 3.2 kilometers in total with scooters in a cave in France. And similar situation where we did not really have the opportunity to stop, stage, shoot, clean up, backtrack, continue. That's very time consuming, and so in some cases, like if you want to cover 3.2 total kilometers in the overhead, even on a rebreather, even on a DPV, you simply don't have the luxury of stopping and staging it, etc. So we had to find a way to shoot the whole thing in one go and still have a variety of shots. And so if you saw that episode, I do explain how we attach an Insta360 X5 on the scooter, how we light it. So in this case, big shout out to Penelope Bergkamp, who is a diver that's behind me with her dive light in a video light. So she creates that blue backlight, which of course allows me to be separated from the background when the focus is on me. I have a light on the scooter, but facing me. It's actually really hard because I'm scootering, I have my dive light, but I also have a light that's shining at me, so I'm illuminated, so you, the viewer, can see me, but it makes it kind of hard to drive, right? It's like someone's headlights are right at you. And then there is diver Ruben Lava in front, who has 20,000 lumens with a diffuser that sort of gives the general illumination. So again, there is a light plan, but we had to experiment a lot. And that would be my next piece of advice is, don't be afraid to experiment with your shooting styles, experiment with equipment, experiment with team configuration. I mean, opinions are divided. Some people in the comments say, oh, I can't watch this 360 stuff. And some people say this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I don't think it's necessarily a recipe for every episode to be shot like this, but it was a cool experiment that really paid off. I was half, maybe more than half thinking, we're not, this is not, I can't edit this. It's gonna be too hard to edit, it's gonna be too hard. But it actually worked out really well and the images do look fairly good. The next piece of sort of underwater film that I'm really proud of on this channel is also from the Boyai Mine series. And it actually comes pretty quickly after we try to install the decompression habitat. And it's not my favorite for cinematographic reasons per se. It's my favorite for, so if you saw the series, you would know this. I was basically in the water when a 7.7 Richter scale earthquake happened in the region. So we witnessed that or heard that from underwater, even though we didn't know what it was. And when we got out of the water, the rest of the team had noticed water movements in the mine shafts, which the water has no reason to move that way. They didn't know what it was, and so we had to really shift gears quickly, get out of the water, take a dry camera, follow, get in. There's a shot of two divers kind of pointing at the water with the flares of the truck behind them. I think that's shot on a cell phone. So there's a whole bunch of different source material in there, which goes back to my earlier tip of like serve the story, but also adapt. And that would be my main advice here. Sometimes you might make a plan, you plan to shoot something, you have a story in mind, you have a shot list in mind, but the dive just happens, or the situation around the dive just happens. And so one thing that we do a lot on the DiveSAGA channel is to adapt to that, right? I would say that a 7.7 Richter scale earthquake is a very relevant and maybe interesting element in that mini-series. And so not shooting that in the moment would leave suddenly a very big emotional component out of the series. So it's maybe not so much underwater cinematography in this case, but it definitely serves the whole, we're mine diving, we're underground, there's an earthquake. So that adaptability as an underwater filmmaker and being able to shift gears and follow the story, I think is very important. My second last shot that I really like is another recent one, and actually the two last ones are recent ones, and it's from a dive we did in l'Emergence de Ressel, which is another cave in France. We shot this summer again with Ruben Lava and Penelope Bergkamp, and they're the models in this shot. They also helped with placing lights. The reason I really like this particular shot is because the first diver, of course, is just shining ahead of them, but the second diver is actually illuminating the first diver, so that's obviously by design. And then there is a 20,000 or 30,000 lumens light placed all the way up on top of the shaft, shining from one side of the room to the other side. So you get this sort of blue-gray haze behind them, which I think adds a lot of depth. And so that would be my next advice, is think about your shots as painting a picture. Like where do I want depth? Where do I want color? What do I want the composition to be? So they're coming from, it looks like they're coming right at you, but if you really analyze the image, you'll see they're actually kind of coming left to right in the frame. So you got a nice diagonal, and then behind them you have that depth of the light that's placed in the distance, the light that they're causing in the front. In fact, I'm not even shooting any light at them. I'm not pointing any light at them. We're just kind of letting the natural, sort of the light is justified by the divers, and that does all the work. But so painting that picture is, in my opinion, very satisfying, but also makes that footage stand out from footage that maybe hasn't had the same thought gone into it. The shot that follows it immediately is them arriving at pit 4 in the Ressel, where we couldn't light the bottom of the pit because none of us are qualified to go to those depths, and also time constraints and whatnot. So we actually have a 60,000 lumens all the way in the back of the room. Like it's so far behind us, you would almost forget it was there, but it creates general ambience. Then we have one light floated up against the ceiling above the pit to kind of sort of put color into the pit. And then you have the two divers with their lights shining down. And so again, you have those layers of light, and thinking about that and layering your shot. It's a little bit like you have those painting kits where the different things are numbered and the colors are numbered and you paint them in. Think about that. Think about the numbers and think about where you would put everything. That's kind of how I often think about a shot. And the last piece of advice that I would have is maybe undoing everything else, but I like to think a lot in terms of simplicity. Sometimes the simplest ways to do something, they're probably the best. Also because you're otherwise not gonna get a lot done. And so there is this other shot, this is from L'Emergence du Marchepied, also in France. It's all from the same series of dives we did there, where diver Ruben Lava comes straight towards the camera, and it's in my opinion, a really nice balanced composition with the eroded rock layers that look like an upside down cross. And all there is a 20,000 lumens light all the way in the back behind him, pointed directly towards the camera. He's blocking it, so he's backlit. The rocks around him are backlit and have nice texture. I want to say there's maybe 10,000 lumens on my side, a little bit off, just to give general illumination for when he comes closer, and that's it. I know it looks there's maybe a light in the ceiling. That's a reflection. Here and there the water surface is lower than the cave ceiling. Personally, could have maybe done without that reflection, just to keep the story simpler, because now it seems like, oh, is the sun peeking through? Is it not? It's not, this is just a reflection. But so sometimes the simplest setups can be the most effective. You'll be able to get more done. You simply are able to tell more story by thinking in simple setups. So although I said earlier, paint a picture, do teamwork, all super important, but also turn your shot list inside out and think, what can I simplify to get all this done? So those are my tips, my 10 favorite shots and the things that I learned. I hope that was useful. We do have videos on this channel with more actual technical settings and stuff like that, but in terms of like learning, I think this goes a long way. I would also like to remind you that you can get a discount on the Underwater Club by using the link below. If you want to learn about underwater photography, Nicolas Remy has a really good online modular way of teaching that. And as I said earlier, they do Q&A sessions with people from 18 different countries. You can send in your work, you can get it critiqued by a professional. So it's a really great way to learn. Thank you guys so much for watching the DiveSAGA channel and for all your support. I will see you next time.